Welcome, one and all, to a review of the FNAF movie. Let me get this out of the way immediately. This review will be with spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, please don't watch further. Alright, so this movie sure is a movie that exists. To get the verdict out of the way, I like the movie. 3 out of 5 is what I'd grade it. However, it's very flawed, and most comes from the conceptual side of production. Considered some hot takes incoming. The costumes are fantastic and the set designs were perfect. It captured the mood and the atmosphere of the game, visualizing this old abandoned pizzeria. It's very clearly FNAF, instead of just any old abandoned restaurant. Clearly a lot of time, effort and care went into establishing the materialization of the movie. CGI fitted in well, it didn't feel off. Camera work was well done and cinematography generally good. On technical and filmmaking levels this movie was great. I like the plot of the kid contacting Mike in his dreams to try to persuade him and influence him, as he's so hyper-focused on getting his little brother back that he forgets his sister. He blames himself. He seems to act out of instinct and assumes the worst of any child in potential danger, as he's deathly afraid of it happening again. His mental suffering is expressed through much, and a driving factor in his actions, good or bad. However, with the good, unfortunately also comes the bad. Sadly, the movie does have a lot of bads that I'd like to address. The movie is officially tagged as a horror film. I would consider it existing somewhere in the purgatory of thriller, mystery and horror. Thriller due to the thrills it delivers, and the mystery because of the thousands of questions it raises and just doesn't answer. The jump scares, as FNAF is famous for in the games, were meek and spread out. Jump scares are usually very sudden and in your face. Most jump scares in the movie had a lot of build-up and were expected. The only effective one generally is the foxy kid jump scare. When it comes to the horror classification of the movie, the horror itself feels spread out and disjointed. Where in one sequence it focused on the scares and impending doom, the other it's wholesome with uplifting montage music to boot and some gags. This is what I mean with this movie living in the purgatory of horror. The main offender in this regard, and a controversial one, is the fourth building scene. It shows the human or child aspects of the animatronics' essences. They are still children at the core, but merely misled and manipulated by an outside force. The purpose is clear and fits to humanize the animatronics. What it also does is absolutely ruin any sense of horror or mystery. For example, I feel like having a scene instead where an animatronic stops in their killing stride and zones out while looking at a kid's drawing could be more subtle, yet still effective, to show their hidden beneath the surface humanity. To give an example by comparing, I'd like to explain another movie that suffered from this exact issue. Snake Week. This is a Dutch movie about a week in the Dutch city of Snake, with parties, events and more in the general theme of sailing. This movie, about this Snake Week event, is also a slasher horror. But the first 3/4 of the movie, it's more of like epic parties, drinking and all that type of stuff, with sporadic tense moments sprinkled between the epic partying, eventually turning into a slasher plot at the end. This movie had no idea what it wanted to be. I understood the basic idea of an usually nice, fun activity week turning dark, but by showing the epic parties and only focusing on the slasher part at the end, it tonally shifted so much it became confusing to keep track of, and for it to be a horror and tense throughout. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie suffered under the same principle. As said, I understand why they did the less horror-y scenes, but it focuses on it too much. The main attraction of the pizzeria and this movie itself are the animatronic characters based on barnyard animals we're all familiar with. In the games and books, these are depicted as complete possessed murder bots with extraordinary strength and weight. In this movie, their strongest weapons are looking angry in critical moments and that cupcake. This cupcake is the most active member of this gang and does the most damage compared to the other actual animatronics who mostly idle, like video game characters, or their killing acts are implied. I would have loved to see them use their large and especially heavy frames to, for example, crush their victims or fling furniture. The main villain of the story is the franchise's somewhat immortal killer, William Afton, Mr. Purple Guy himself. The build-up to his reveal and entrance to the finale was poor. Ironically, the retro video gamey intro montage is all the build-up we will get. I believe a live-action depiction of his killing spree would have done a much better job setting up his villainy, introducing the spring bunny suit and perhaps have shown some motivation. But more about that in a bit. I missed references and scenarios usually found from the game. power out Toreador March Freddy, no spookiness on the security cameras, no use of the doors for security and keeping the animatronics out, no Freddy nose hunk, how dare they, and some missed opportunities for Foxy to run across the hallway. Although not like vital, those aspects were telltale hallmarks that put FNAF 1 on the map. Those, Markiplier, of course.
Where's Mark, William?
What was likely a choice to maintain the PG-13 rating and save up on money was often cutting away from interesting shots or kills. Although understandable, it irked me wrong as the movie often felt like it wanted to show those interesting things due to the setups and suspense, but cut away to a whole different scene. What you get then is unfortunately disappointment. To put in perspective, let's say you're like watching the new Saw movie, right? And when the trap goes off, it cuts away to the next day. Or if you're watching a soccer match and it cuts to ads before a goal might be scored, it destroys tension and results of the build-up towards it. The cast is generally a good choice. Josh Hutcherson was a good choice for the main character. His acting was fine but likely limited due to the script. The kid actors did a great job, especially Piper Rubio for Abby. Kid actors are hard to come by. Elizabeth Lill as Vanessa was arguably one of the weaker roles, despite having at least some personality and a personal connection to Freddy's. Glad to see she got out of Joe's box. Vanessa serves this classic role of exposition dump machine to tell the backstory to Mike and therefore the audience. However, it's always just not enough to give clarity. To give some reason to the madness, but keep it just fake enough, even though what she doesn't tell could have really helped Mike and Abby. I can understand that the situation is traumatic to her, but that's no excuse to not warn Mike, given she clearly wants to help. She also does it like 180-degree turn in one of the scenes. She gleefully joins in on building that fort with the killer animatronics together with Abby, actively encouraging bonding with the robots. Yet in the next scene, she turns moody and threatens Mike if she brings Abby back to Freddy's again. Would have been really helpful if she told more so we can understand her predicament. Also, yeah, she gets stabbed by Afton, her father, who doesn't respond to her falling to the ground, perhaps dead by his own hand. His daughter possibly dead by his own hand seems a mere minor inconvenience to him. He almost just doesn't react, instead being far more emotionally invested with Abby putting the new drawing up. You could say Afton is a psychopath and has no empathy, but it's still his child he raised. She's not adopted either, given his line about temper tantrums. She shot him, yeah, but if she was truly intent on crippling or killing him, she likely would have hit somewhere vital or even his head. He's in no way hampered by the gunshots afterwards. I don't know what to make of this, really. Mike's motivation to find a job at Freddy's is his inability to find a fitting job long term, and is accelerated by his aunt's want to gain custody over his younger sister Abby. The role of the aunt doesn't play too much of a role and is honestly redundant. I think a setting of a struggling older brother trying to make ends meet for himself and his younger sister would be sufficient enough. The aunt's motivation to gain custody is flimsy at best and doesn't serve a critical purpose to advance the plot meaningfully. In the end, there's no conclusion or resolution about the situation. About that, by the way, did everyone forget this antagonistic aunt was killed by Golden Freddy? After she's killed, it seems the writing team and the entire world forgot about her. What would happen if the dead body of the aunt was found in Mike's house? Mike would likely be held accountable and be separated from his younger sister, whom he fought hard to save from Afton's clutches. The next time we're in Mike's house, they don't even address it at all. Is the corpse still there? Did Mike chop her up or bury the body? Her corpse was last seen in the living room, fucking dead. So the aunt is a redundant motivating factor for Mike to get a job faster and accept the offer for Freddy's quicker and to give motivation for the raiding party. Also somewhat unnecessary given Afton's line of Freddy's often already having break-ins or homeless. In the end, she is killed and literally nobody cares. If you, hypothetically, remove the aunt's plot from the entire story, you don't really lose much. It's the principle of Chekhov's gun. Don't address it if it doesn't serve a purpose in your story. Also, the lawyer actor is absolutely based. It's the best performance in the whole movie. Afton's presence in the movie is minimal. The movie spends no time giving any form or motivation or reason behind his killing other than himself being objectively comically evil. He's practically a faceless force of evil for the sake of being evil. He's like a Marvel villain. There's no need to spend much of the movie's runtime to prevent an elaborate backstory, but at least give hints to what has caused him to do the abhorrent things he did. Only in the last sequence wherein he finally reveals himself does he truly speak plainly and give some vague hints behind his reasoning and thought processes. Furthermore, he's of no influence in the plot. One could argue we'll see that elaborated in the sequels, but the general audience shouldn't need to do homework to understand the funny killer man in the yellow bunny suit. A movie should be self-sufficient, wherein major plot points are addressed and reasons given to facilitate. Sequels should continue and elaborate to expand further on the first installment. Look at any first movie in a sequel line of more famous franchises. None require you to do homework or leave you with major questions about character motivations. Hell, even the first FNAF game was created in that sense, given basic reasons in the phone calls and more closer hints in those newspaper articles. It's clear this movie was written and created with sequels in mind to further explain and elaborate the motivations and reasonings of characters. And given its box office success, that will most likely happen due to, funny singing there, and not necessarily its conceptual strength. Speaking of Afton, yeah, his final act and death are very inconsistent and, to be honest, downright confusing. I can see his control over the animatronics using the drawings, as that's a major theme in the movie, but in no way does he protect this absolute vital tool of controlling them. The spring locks activating only after the cupcake bites his abdomen is a bit odd, since before that happened, he was shot by a gun, and even before that, a taser connects, which sends electrical charge through the recipient. If anything would prompt the spring locks to work, it would be a sudden electrical surge. But hey, what do I know? I'm no Henry. The spring locks activating and impaling him prompt only grunts of discomfort. In any depiction of Afton's death, it's shown to be very painful and bloody, yet here it seems more of a discomfort. You could argue that he's more resistant to pain, but honestly, being impaled by cold metal suddenly across your entire body would prompt a more gruesome response from anyone. I wonder what... Oh, I see. Additionally, his Marvel one-liner of "I always come back" felt so out of place. It was obviously written as a reference for fans to understand, but it doesn't fit in the context of the entire movie. After which he puts on the mask that is currently actively killing him? It's so goofy. Right, so what's the use and function of the Freddy Mask Saw thing? Like the previous point, it's not hinted at or elaborated at all. It seems like a trailer tool or purely for shock value. I honestly think someone on the writing team watched too many Saw movies. What happened to stuffing people in suits? Because this is obviously not how the kids died. Do victim faces have to be mauled? Do they have multiple ones lying around in case one is actually used? Do the animatronics do this, or Afton? You see, a simple extra shot of Afton watching, with maybe a sadistic grin, would have satisfied at least some basic reasoning. Maybe he enjoys this display of gore, but there's no reasoning behind it other than to shock the audience. Right, I see. Well, likely no in the sequel. And that's basically what the movie is to me. It's a setup for a sequel to elaborate and explain the things we saw in this movie further. With the direction it took, it came across more as a high-budget fan film, unfortunately. It's a lot of criticism I gave. However, that doesn't mean I hate the movie or think it's bad. I think there were some rushed or poor conceptual choices that had the potential to be great. It's clear to me that a lot of love and labor went into creating this movie, and I do appreciate all the time and effort that went into creating it. Making movie takes a lot of time and man hours. It's a good movie, with potential to be better. This movie, if anything, is a love letter to the fans of the series that has been ongoing for 9 years. Wait, 9 years? Are you kidding me? God, I'm old. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this review and my extremely hot takes. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or don't, if you don't feel like it at all. I hope to see you around in further videos.